Picture this. You're at a massive house party, the music is blasting, everyone's having an amazing time. And then the red and blue lights flash through the window. The cops are here, and they are actively kicking down the front door. What do? Well, if you're me and my friends, you hop a fence, accidentally tackle some massive guard dogs in the pitch black, street race a classic 65 Mustang down the empty California freeway, and somehow end up having one of the best nights of your life. Grab a snack and get comfortable, because today I'm telling you the story of how the absolute worst Friday night turned into a midnight skinny dipping session I will never forget. Let's get into it. The damp earth of the neighbor's flower bed was cool against my palms, smelling strongly of freshly laid mulch and crushed geraniums. We were huddled together behind a thick row of overgrown oleander bushes, our breath coming in ragged, synchronized gasps. Through the gaps in the leaves, the strobing red and blue lights from the police cruisers painted the side of the house we had just fled in chaotic, flashing colors. The muffled sounds of the party being violently disassembled, shouts of authority, the clatter of dropped bottles, the groans of teenagers realizing they were getting citations, drifted over the huge leafy hedges. "Okay," Evan whispered, his voice barely audible over the thumping of my own heart. "We can't stay here. If they start doing a perimeter sweep, they're going to shine the flashlights through the hedges. We need to put at least 2 more houses between us and the cops before we even think about hitting the street." Tess, who was kneeling on the other side of me, frantically trying to brush dirt off the knees of her favorite jeans, nodded. "Lead the way, wilderness explorer. But if I tear my pants on another nail, I'm making you buy me a new pair." Maya and Jay were pressed against the base of the hedge, exchanging wide-eyed looks of pure adrenaline. Maya gave a quick thumbs up. "Right," Evan said, mapping out the path with a pointed finger. "Over that far wall, into the next yard. From there, we should be able to cut across one more and use their side gate to get out on the next block. Move fast, stay low, and for the love of God, don't step on Mrs. Grant's flowers." We gathered ourselves together, a tangle of limbs and whispered curses as we untangled from the oleanders. We moved like a group of exceptionally clumsy amateur ninjas. Evan went first, boosting himself over the cinder block wall that separated our current hiding spot from the next property. He straddled the top, leaning down to offer a hand. Jay went next, scrambling up with surprising agility, followed by Maya, then Tess. I was the last one over. As Evan hauled me up, I caught a glimpse back at the party house. Cops were now actively marching people out the front door, their flashlights cutting through the humid night air like lightsabers. I dropped down into the second yard, landing softly on a patch of perfectly manicured Bermuda grass. This yard was immaculate, a stark contrast to the untamed bushes we had just left. A large stone fountain gurgled peacefully in the center, and path lights illuminated a walkway. "Watch the lights," Jay hissed, dropping to a crouch. We practically bear crawled across the pristine lawn, terrified that a motion sensor would suddenly flood the yard with halogen brightness and expose us to whoever was sleeping inside the house. We made it to the opposite fence without triggering anything. This one was wrought iron, entwined with thick, thorny vines. It took us an agonizing 5 minutes of careful maneuvering, muted yelps of pain, and fabric snags to get all 5 of us over it. I landed with a heavier thud this time, my sneakers crunching onto a concrete patio. Suddenly, a low, guttural rumble vibrated through the soles of my shoes. We all froze. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. The yard was pitch black, shadowed by the massive canopy of a sprawling oak tree. "Did you guys hear that?" Tess whispered, her voice trembling. The rumble escalated into a vicious, full-throated bark. In the darkness, the heavy, rhythmic thumping of paws tore across the grass, accelerating directly toward us. "Dogs!" Maya shrieked, momentarily forgetting our stealth mission. "Oh my God, dogs!" From the shadows, 2 massive shapes barreled towards us. I braced myself, throwing my arms up to protect my face, visions of getting mauled in a stranger's backyard flashing before my eyes. Evan instinctively stepped in front of us, putting his arms out. The dogs hit us like furry freight trains, but instead of teeth sinking into flesh, I felt a heavy set of paws hit my shoulders, knocking me backward onto the concrete. A massive, wet tongue swiped aggressively across my cheek, from my chin all the way up to my forehead. "Ugh!" I sputtered, wiping dog saliva from my eye. The terrifying beasts were two enormous, impossibly goofy golden retrievers. They were whining with absolute joy, tails wagging so hard their entire back halves were shaking. The second dog was currently occupied with weaving between Evan's legs, occasionally stopping to affectionately headbutt Tess in the shins. Good boy, shh," Evan coaxed, dropping to his knees to enthusiastically scratch the dog behind the ears. "Keep them quiet, guys. Pet them. Make them happy." For the next 2 minutes, we formed a desperate petting circle on the patio, vigorously rubbing bellies, scratching chins, and whispering sweet nothings to the two most intimidatingly friendly guard dogs on the planet. They panted happily, soaking up the attention, clearly thrilled that 5 strangers had dropped out of the sky into their yard for a midnight cuddle session. "Okay, the side gate is right there," Evan whispered, pointing toward the front of the house. "On the count of 3, we get up, walk fast, and slip out. Don't run or they'll think it's a game and bark." We managed to untangle ourselves from the adoring dogs, who whined softly but stayed put on the patio as we tiptoed to the wooden side gate. Evan reached over it, unlatched it with a soft click, and we slipped through one by one, pulling it securely shut behind us. We were finally out on the street. It was the block over from the party, but we could still see the intersection where all the chaos was happening. "All right, deep breaths," Evan said, straightening his shirt. "We belong here. We are just a group of friends taking a lovely midnight stroll. Look casual." We forced our postures to relax, smoothing down our clothes and trying to shake off the adrenaline jitters. We began a slow, deliberate walk down the sidewalk toward where we had parked our cars. The contrast was surreal. On our street, crickets chirped peacefully in the manicured lawns. Just 50 yards away, at the corner, it was a scene of total suburban devastation. 3 more squad cars had arrived. Teenagers were sitting dejectedly on the curbs, some crying, some arguing with the officers. We kept our heads down just enough to avoid direct eye contact, but our eyes were glued to the spectacle. As we walked past the side profile of the party house, we had a clear, unobstructed view through a massive illuminated bay window into the living room. "Oh man," Tess whispered, pointing discreetly. "Look." Inside, standing in the middle of the trashed living room, surrounded by red plastic cups, tipped-over chairs, and an unfortunate stain on the white rug, was Evan's little brother Toby. He was wearing an oversized backwards baseball cap and looked incredibly small standing in front of the 2 imposing police officers. Toby's hands were flying wildly as he talked, clearly trying to spin a magnificent, desperate lie to explain away the 200 high schoolers that had just been evicted from his parents' house. I looked over at Evan, expecting him to look worried or guilty. Instead, Evan just shook his head slowly, a smirk playing on his lips. "Well," Evan said casually, "he'll have to explain all that to Mom and Dad when they get back from Aspen on Monday." Maya let out a snort of laughter, quickly covering her mouth to muffle the sound. "You are cold-blooded, Evan." "Hey, he wanted to host the party. I just showed up for the free beer," Evan replied, shrugging. "Come on, cars are just ahead." We reached the row of parked cars safely outside the immediate police perimeter. Jay's car was a beautifully restored cherry red 1965 Ford Mustang. It was her baby, and she drove it with the protective ferocity of a mother bear. Evan's car was a sleek, modern black sedan parked 2 spots down. "All right, how are we going to do this?" Jay asked, jingling her keys in her pocket. "Jay and I are taking the Mustang," Maya announced, already moving toward the heavy metal doors. "You guys take Evan's." Tess and I nodded, moving toward Evan's car. Evan unlocked it, but before getting in, he leaned over the roof of his sedan and locked eyes with Jay, who was just settling into the Mustang seat. "Hey, Jay," Evan called out, pitching his voice just loud enough to carry over the distant sirens. "Try and keep up, all right? I know that this antique looks pretty, but I'd hate to leave you guys in the dust on the freeway." Maya's head snapped over the roof of the Mustang. Even in the dim streetlights, I could see the competitive fire ignite in her eyes. "Antique? Oh, you're dead, Evan. See you in Covina. If you're lucky, we'll leave a breadcrumb trail for you." Evan laughed, sliding into the driver's seat. Tess claimed shotgun, leaving me to stretch out in the spacious back seat. The moment Evan's doors slammed shut, the throaty, aggressive roar of Jay's Mustang engine ripped through the quiet street. She didn't even wait for us to start our engine. She peeled out from the curb, leaving a faint cloud of exhaust and the squeal of rubber in her wake. "Oh, it's on," Evan muttered. He threw the car into drive and punched the gas. The chase ensued. We shot out of the suburban neighborhood, the adrenaline from the police bus seamlessly transferring into the thrill of the race. Evan navigated the back streets with precision, his eyes darting between the road and the taillights of the Mustang a few blocks ahead. The moment we hit the ramp on the I-10 East, all bets were off. Evan cranked the stereo, blasting a heavy, pulsing bass track that matched the racing speed of my heart. The freeway was mostly empty at this hour, a wide expanse of concrete stretching out into the California night. Jay was pushing the Mustang, weaving smoothly between the sparse late-night traffic. Evan kept pace, the sedan's engine humming a high-pitched tune as we hovered around 80 miles an hour. Tess was laughing, holding on to the "oh shit" handle above the passenger's door as Evan took a sweeping curve. "We're going to get pulled over, and this time we can't hop a fence." "Relax," Evan grinned, his eyes locked on the road. "I know where the speed traps are. Besides, Jay's the one drawing all the attention." For 20 minutes, we flew down the highway, a high-speed convoy of liberated party hounds. The wind whipped through the slightly cracked windows, carrying the scent of dry asphalt and the cool night air. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and white. We finally took the exit for Covina, the Mustang still just a few car lengths ahead. We wound our way through a series of quiet, tree-lined streets until we pulled into a wide, freshly paved driveway. Jay's Mustang was already parked, the engine ticking as it cooled down. Jay and Maya were leaning against the hood, looking incredibly smug. "Took you long enough," Maya teased as we piled out of Evan's car. "I was letting you win. Didn't want to hurt the old girl's engine," Evan shot back, though he was grinning. I turned my attention to the house. It was a nice, incredibly normal-looking one-story ranch-style home. It had a neatly trimmed lawn, a brick facade, and a wide front porch. It looked like the kind of house where a family of 4 would host Sunday barbecues. However, in stark contrast to the quiet, sleeping neighborhood around it, the house was alive. Every single window was blazing with warm yellow light. The muffled, rhythmic thud of a heavy bass line vibrated through the front door, just loud enough to be felt in your chest, but contained enough to not bring the local police. A relief considering our evening so far. "You live here?" Tess asked, sounding surprised. "With 3 other guys, yeah," Evan said, pulling his keys from his pocket. "We try to keep the outside looking respectable so the HOA doesn't fine us. The inside, however, is our domain." Evan unlocked the front door and pushed it open, gesturing for us to enter. We walked into a spacious, open-concept living area. The air was thick with the smell of cheap beer and a hint of chlorine. Evan walked in like a conquering hero returning from a victorious campaign. The 3 guys lounging in the living room all turned to look. One was sprawled on a massive sectional sofa, aggressively mashing buttons on a game controller. Another was at the kitchen island, meticulously building a dangerously tall sandwich. The third was leaning over a beautiful felt green billiards table that dominated the center of the room, lining up a shot. They all froze as Evan strolled in, followed closely by Tess, Maya, Jay, and me. "Gentlemen," Evan announced grandly, spreading his arms, "the party in the hills got busted by the cops. But fear not. I have brought the party to us." The guy at the billiards table slowly lowered his cue. He was tall, with curly dark hair and a genuinely infectious smile. He looked from Evan to the four of us and back to Evan. "Evan, you beautiful bastard," the guy with the sandwich said, abandoning his culinary masterpiece and wiping his hands on a towel. He was blond, built like a linebacker, and had a remarkably friendly face. "You actually brought home a gang of women? Where did they come from?" "I never lie, Marcus," Evan said. "Girls, this is Marcus." He pointed to the sandwich maker. "The guy staring at you with the pool cue is Leo, and the vegetable on the couch is Dave." Dave waved a hand in a grand gesture without taking his eyes off the TV screen. "Welcome." The dynamic of the evening shifted instantly. The frantic, nervous energy of the escape melted away, replaced by the warm, electric buzz of a new, unexpected party. Marcus and Leo were thrilled. It was obvious they had been having a slow, boring Friday night, and the sudden arrival of 4 girls looking for a good time was the best thing that could have happened. "Can I get anyone a drink?" Marcus offered enthusiastically, moving to a large stainless steel fridge. "We have beer, we have seltzers, we have some questionable tequila Leo bought in Mexico, and I think I can make a decent margarita if I can find the blender." "Margaritas sound amazing," Jay said, flashing Marcus a brilliant smile that made the big guy blush slightly. Leo walked around the billiards table, offering the cue stick to Maya. "Do you play?" "I dabble," Maya said, her competitive streak flaring up again. She took the cue, inspecting the tip with a critical eye. "But I warn you, I grew up with a pool table in my basement." "Challenge accepted," Leo grinned. Within minutes, the house was echoing with laughter, the clack of billiard balls, and the whir of the blender. The music was turned up just a notch, a perfect playlist of pop and classic rock. Tess and Evan disappeared into the kitchen to help Marcus with the drinks, leaving me to watch Maya absolutely dismantle Leo at the pool table. Leo, to his credit, was taking the defeat gracefully. He spent more time watching Maya line up her shots, admiring her focus, than he did actually looking at the table. It was heavy, undeniable flirting, wrapped in the guise of friendly competition. I grabbed a freshly poured margarita from Tess as she walked by and leaned against the wall, taking in the scene. It was fun, effortlessly fun. There was no pressure here, no drama of a massive high school party, no anxiety about who was talking to who. It was just an easy, relaxed vibe with people who were genuinely happy to be there. "You know," Marcus said, walking up next to me and leaning against the wall. He smelled like lime juice and Old Spice. "It's entirely unfair that Evan gets all the credit for bringing you guys here. I'm the one providing the top-tier hospitality." "The margarita is excellent, I'll give you that," I laughed, taking a sip. But Evan did successfully navigate us through a backyard filled with potentially lethal guard dogs. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Lethal guard dogs? Are you talking about Mr. Henderson's golden retrievers? Those dogs would aggressively lick you to death, maybe." "We didn't know that at the time," I protested, laughing. We talked for a while, the conversation flowing easily from terrible drinking games to our favorite late-night diner spots. Marcus was funny and really easy to talk to. As the night wore on, the games of pool grew sloppier, the laughter grew louder, and the Southern California heat began to settle into the house. "It is way too hot in here," Jay declared suddenly, fanning herself with a coaster. She looked toward the large sliding glass doors at the back of the living room, which looked out onto a dark backyard. "Tell me you guys have a pool." "We do," Leo said, leaning his pool cue against the wall. "But we don't have extra swimsuits, unless you guys want to wear Evan's oversized board shorts." Maya looked at Jay, then at Tess, and finally at me. A silent, mischievous consensus passed between the four of us. The adrenaline of the police chase was still humming quietly in our veins, making us feel reckless and invincible. "Who said anything about swimsuits?" Maya asked, a wicked grin spreading across her face. Dave, who had been completely silent on the couch for the last hour, suddenly paused his video game and turned around, his eyes wide. "Wait, seriously?" Marcus asked, his voice dropping an octave. "Only if you guys are brave enough," Tess challenged, already walking toward the sliding glass doors and throwing them open. The warm, humid night air rolled into the living room, smelling of chlorine mixed with flowers. The backyard was private, surrounded by tall, thick hedges that blocked out the neighbors completely. The bottom of the pool was painted black, illuminated from within by a single soft light, making the water glow invitingly in the dark. There was a moment of hesitation, a collective intake of breath as we all stood on the edge of the patio. Then Evan laughed, pulling his shirt over his head and tossing it onto a lounge chair. "Well, I'm not going to be the one who chickens out in my own house." The ensuing 10 minutes were a blur of nervous giggles, the rustle of clothing being hastily discarded in the shadows, and the glorious, shocking splash of warm water against bare skin. We slid into the glowing, inky pool, the water enveloping us in a weightless, silky darkness. The initial awkwardness of being exposed evaporated the moment we were all submerged in the warm water. It was incredibly liberating. We clustered in the deep end, treading water and laughing as the guys playfully splashed us, the original anxiety of the police chase fading away. The humid, warm air carried the scent of jasmine and chlorine mixed with the faint beat of the music from the house. Then the sound of the side gate opening and a latch shut with a clack cut through the pleasant noise. We all froze. The roommates on the patio, Marcus, Leo, and Dave, straightened up. 2 men stepped from the shadows into the patio light. They were older, maybe 30, and had the arrogant swagger of uninvited guests. They were dressed in polo shirts and jeans, looking considerably more professional than the rest of us, but their presence instantly strangled the easy vibe. "Rod, Gary," Marcus's voice lost all its warmth, replaced by hard tension. "What are you doing here?" They didn't answer Marcus. They were too busy staring into the pool, their eyes lingering aggressively on the treading water. One of them, Gary, who was shorter and broader with receding hair, nudged his taller, leaner friend Rod with his elbow. "Well, damn," Gary muttered, a slow, appreciative smirk spreading across his face as he looked directly at Maya, treading water near the steps. "Didn't know the nursery was open tonight, Evan." "Marcus, you gotta introduce us to your friends," Rod drawled, his gaze moving from girl to girl in the water, calculating and leering. He pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and slowly lit one, the smoke drifting across the pool. "Which one is the blonde, Marcus?" The initial fun was choked by their presence. We pressed closer together in the deep end, trying to make ourselves as small and inconspicuous as possible. I looked at the roommates. Marcus and Leo looked ready to fight, but they were also clearly uncomfortable with confronting these 2 uninvited men directly in front of their guests. "Guys, not now," Leo said, stepping forward. "We have guests. You can't just show up." Rod and Gary ignored him, continuing to make low, suggestive comments to each other, laughing loudly at their own crude jokes about how we looked cold and needed warming up. The violation was palpable. We needed to get out, but the thought of exposing ourselves to these 2 leering men made us all freeze in the water, paralyzed by fear and anger. "I'm getting those towels," Jay whispered fiercely, her voice tight with rage. I looked at her. Her face was set in a hard, determined mask. Before anyone could protest or even understand what she was doing, Jay launched herself through the water. She swam hard toward the shallow end, pulling herself aggressively from the pool near the steps. The water cascaded off her body, emphasizing her athletic shape, but her defiance was like steel. She didn't pause for a moment. She didn't look back. She walked straight to the stack of large bath towels that Leo had set on a table. She grabbed 3 of them in one arm and with her free hand grabbed her denim jacket. She spun around, marched back to the edge of the pool, and tossed the towels into the deep end, right to Tess, Maya, and me. "Get out and get dressed," Jay ordered, her voice cutting through the humid air like a knife. "Now." We scrambled out in the shadows, wrapping ourselves up frantically and trying to pull our damp clothes back on, our hearts pounding. I yanked on my shirt, watching Jay. Rod was staring at her as she moved, but Gary saw his opportunity. He moved fast, intercepting Jay before she could pick up her jeans from the chaise lounge and cornering her against the brick wall of the house near the sliding glass doors. "Hey, little girl," Gary rasped, getting so close she could smell the alcohol and stale tobacco on his breath. "You're quite the show-off. I like a girl with spunk." He persisted, leaning in, blocking her exit. Jay didn't flinch. She just stared at him with cold, terrifying intensity. Then he grabbed her upper arm roughly, pulling her toward him. "Come here," he muttered. "Just a little fun." The mistake was catastrophic. The brute force grip on her arm triggered years of muscle memory. Jay had spent nearly a decade at the martial arts dojo, and this was exactly the kind of threat she trained to neutralize. She inhaled deeply, her focus sharp as glass. With speed and precision that was awesome to watch, she rotated her wrist outward, breaking the lever of his thumb. Simultaneously, she dropped her center of gravity, generating explosive force that shot through her other hand. A quick, calculated open palm strike connected solidly with a specific nerve cluster on the side of his neck. Gary choked, his eyes instantly widening as his grip loosened. The impact sent a wave of sharp, nauseating pain exploding through his shoulder and down his spine. He staggered backward, clutching his neck and gasping for air, his face turning an angry shade of red as he crumpled to his knees on the concrete. "Oh my God," Tess gasped, having just pulled her sweatshirt on, running over. The whole scene was visible now. Gary was rolling on the ground, groaning. Jay was standing over him, her stance defensive, calm, and ready for his next move. The other roommates reacted instantly. Marcus and Leo charged across the patio, stepping between Rod, who was rushing over to his friend, and Jay. "She defended herself," Marcus said, his voice hard as iron, staring at the stunned Rod and the groaning Gary. "You two have officially worn out your welcome. Actually, you were never welcome. Get out." "He's hurt!" "You psycho!" Rod shouted at Jay, pointing an accusing finger, his face pale with rage. "And if you don't get him the hell out of here in the next 10 seconds, he's going to be hurt worse," Leo added, pulling Rod back by his shirt collar. "Dave, open the side gate." "Out. Now. And don't you ever think about setting foot in this house again." The sheer fury of the 3 roommates combined with the shock of Jay's brutal efficiency made them realize there was no winning this fight. Dave kicked the side gate open. Rod helped a stumbling, still gasping, and now humiliated Gary toward the exit, giving Jay one final impotent glare before they disappeared into the darkness. The gate latched shut with a heavy, final clang. The silence that followed was thick and oppressive. The original fun of the evening was completely obliterated. We stood together on the patio, still damp under our clothes, the adrenaline of the fight slowly receding. Evan put an arm around Jay, but I could see her hands slightly shaking. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded, taking a slow breath. "Yeah, I'm okay. He shouldn't have grabbed me." "We are so sorry, guys," Marcus said, his voice gentle and apologetic now. "We had no idea they were coming. Rod is our HOA president's son, and Gary is his friend, but we've never had issues like this before." A sense of fierce solidarity washed over us. We were no longer just random people who had thrown a party. We were a group that had just survived a real threat together. "It's okay," I said, finding my voice. We're glad they're gone. And Jay, that was amazing. We huddled together for another hour, finishing our drinks and trying to reclaim some of the lost easy energy. We played a sloppy, low-stakes game of doubles pool, with Jay and Maya dominating. When it was pushing 3:30 in the morning, we finally decided we had to leave. We stood by the front door, a tangle of damp hair and borrowed sweatshirts, but the vibe was different. It was quieter, more mature, and grounded in mutual respect. Seriously, Marcus said, standing at the door as we said our final goodbyes. Thank you guys for hanging in there. The invitation for next weekend still stands, and I promise you, only respectful people will be here. I need that rematch, Leo said, offering his hand to Maya. I think my confidence might be damaged forever, but I'll try. Maya smiled. Good luck with that, Leo. I still plan to beat you at Mario Kart, Marcus said to me. Try to manage your expectations, I laughed, giving him a hug. We walked back out into the cool Covina night. The street was dead silent. As we climbed into the Mustang, I felt exhausted and damp, but a profound sense of pride and safety settled into my chest. Next weekend, then? Tess said from the back seat, her voice sounding sleepily content. Next weekend, I agreed, watching the glowing windows of the house disappear as we turned the corner, looking forward to the next adventure with the confidence that we could handle whatever came our way. So yeah, that freezing cold midnight swim was definitely memorable, but not for the reason we thought it would be. Things took a pretty scary turn when those guys showed up uninvited. And honestly, I have never been more proud of a friend than I was when Jay defended herself against that creep Gary. That decade in the martial arts dojo paid off in a big way. It was a powerful moment, and it completely shifted the dynamic. It reinforced how safe we felt with our group. And hey, Marcus, Leo, Dave, Evan, they didn't hesitate. They stood up for us, instantly making it clear that that kind of behavior is absolutely not tolerated in their house. We found an amazing group of friends and a safe sanctuary that night. But now I want to hear your thoughts. Have you ever seen someone shut down a creep with that kind of confidence? Or have you ever had a fun night turn into a serious test? Drop your stories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to support my channel, please hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. And yes, the invitation for next Saturday's party still stands. The creeps are officially banned forever, so you know I'm bringing you guys with me for the real fun. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one.